And I came here in 1986 to run it for myself, and I signed the papers, and I was owner of the Red Barn Incorporated. People come in here for the experience, more so than I think anything else. And they love the fact that somebody's actually taking the time to listen. Maybe you learn in proportion to how much you listen and care. If you can find that balance between doing what you love that isn't really work, that might pay the bills, and can resonate with people and actually to some extent help people. Without my customers, I would be doing what I don't love, guaranteed.
Central Maine CATV's coverage of today's council meeting is sponsored by The Meadows at Fieldstone Landing, located at 40 Shores Road, Waterville, Maine. Give them a call at 859-1966 or visit them online at fieldstonelanding.com.
Good evening. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. If anybody would like an agenda, they are on the plastic sleeve in the back wall. Before we go any farther, I will ask our chairman to please stand and lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is a proclamation that I will be reading this evening, and this has to do with Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it after I read the proclamation. Whereas cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children and is detected in more than 15,000 of our country's sons and daughters every year. Whereas September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, a time to honor and remember the children whose young lives were taken too soon from families facing childhood cancer today, to help rally support to give kids with cancer better outcomes. And whereas, thanks to ongoing advances in research and treatment, the 5-year survival rate for all childhood cancers has climbed from less than 50 to 80% over the last several decades. But help does not come soon enough for many of our sons and daughters, and too many families suffer pain and devastating losses. And whereas innovative studies are leading to real breakthroughs, reminding us of the importance in supporting scientific discovery and moving closer to finding cures, though much work remains to be done. And whereas National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month helps us to remember the many children who have been taken too soon, and to extend our support to all those who continue to battle this illness with incredible strength and courage. Now, therefore, I, Nicholas Isgrow, Mayor of the City of Waterville, on behalf of the City Council, hereby proclaim September 2017 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in honor of 10-year-old Haley Stewart, a Maine native who has been fighting leukemia for the past 5 years and recently learned that she is terminal. Haley and her mother have spearheaded a Go Gold Maine campaign to do everything possible to help families like theirs through the hardest part of their journey with childhood cancer. And this was part of that, was trying to get as many towns and cities to make these proclamations as they could. And I know Mayor Rollins in Augusta made a similar proclamation, I believe, recently. And so this one's for Haley. And we will be making sure she gets this original copy of this. Next up on the agenda is community notes. Community notes is a time where if anybody has something they would like to say, speak about, talk about, that is not currently on the agenda to be spoken about tonight. Now would be the time to do so. We ask that you keep your commentary around 3 minutes. I will let you know if you start to get too long-winded and ask you to wrap it up. Is there anybody on the council who has community notes?
I actually do. So I'll start things tonight by just saying that when people come here to discuss issues and ideas, and they feel they can't do that without risk of public insult or intimidation, their right to free speech has been violated. And very unfortunately, at the last City Council meeting on June 20th, that occurred. I'd like to apologize to Dr. Scott Taylor, Mr. Scott Jones, and also the Booker family, all of whom suffered verbal attacks at the last City Council meeting. This shouldn't happen here. especially not in this room, where all citizens should be treated with dignity and respect. Waterville is a community of neighbors, and we're going to be neighbors long before the current political disputes are over. It's imperative that we listen to one another respectfully.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for community notes? All right, Mr. Lucier, I see you first in line. Tell us who you are and where you live.
I'm Paul Lucier. I live on Meadow Drive in Waterville, Ward 5. At our last meeting, it was my intention to speak to the councilors as well as to anyone else that works for the city or is appointed to any board to encourage all of us. I came here as Paul Lucier, as a former city employee and serving on the planning board, but not representing the planning board. It was my goal to encourage us all to do our jobs well and to, above all else, avoid the appearance of wrongdoing. Somehow it took on a life of its own, and well, you all know where it ended up going. And several days later in a newspaper, I had to go back and look at the video to make sure I hadn't said all of those things. And so a clear example this week of being maybe legally right, but appearing to have done wrong, would be Governor Christie's beach photos. Probably okay to be there. It's his house. The state gives it to him. It's on that beach. But I would say most of his population thought that it was the wrong thing to do. So the residents of Waterville are watching us all. They want us to do the right thing, and we need to avoid any perception of maybe not doing it right. That's all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Uri Lessing. I am Lauren Lessing's husband, so I'm very biased. I'm madly in love with her, and I say that every time I come up here and talk. I'm also an elementary school teacher at the Albert S. Hall School, and I serve on 2 arts boards here in Waterville, and I appear in theatrical productions as well. First off, Nick, thank you so much for your statement. It's so important, and I feel very honored as a citizen of this city to be a part of that pact, and I think it's an absolutely powerful statement, and I appreciate that. In the newspaper, I made the mistake of going to the comment sections of these articles that were written about.
Never do that.
I know, it was such a mistake, and multiple times it was identified as a negative that Lauren Lessing's husband is a school teacher and that she cannot, that she's going to be biased because she is married to a school teacher. And I found that very hurtful because, you know, I was always raised to understand that being a school teacher is a very honorable position, that it's a position to be married to someone who teaches children is an honorable thing. And, you know, my involvement as a teacher, I very intentionally take a very bipartisan approach and a very non-political approach in the classroom, because if I were to reflect political opinions about anything, I would not be able to be an effective teacher. I would alienate, you know, a large percentage of my class either way. You know, to find myself being identified as something that is politically influential is frustrating, and it's kind of, it makes it harder to do my job. So I would appreciate not being seen as something that's a political tool that's going to create any sort of bias whatsoever. I can tell you quite, you know, honestly, my own opinions, I've tried to keep them as much to my chest as possible. I try to be a good parent, a good teacher to the parents of the community, and I'm doing my best. So I don't want to be politicized, and I've asked this nicely a couple of times, and this is the 3rd time I'm asking. Please don't politicize my career. Thank you.
And Uri, you and I are friends, and I know you do a fantastic job. I know your students are very happy and fortunate to be in your class. Thank you.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. I agree with 2 out of the 3 comments that Councillor Lessing made. I did apologize to the gentleman concerned. I had made a mistake. A genuine mistake. I said Colby letterhead when it was Colby email, and I would like to be corrected on that. He did not send any information from Colby letterhead. It was an email, genuine mistake. As far as mentioning the other gentleman, no apologies because it was his presentation, so I had to refer to his name to present the new facts on the presentation. And a lot's demanded here, but I was very perturbed that a sitting councillor would publicly attack in the press members of a grassroots democratic movement, labeling them as unceasingly belligerent. These are intimidating tactics and un-American. If we have been unceasing, it is because we are constantly invited back to council to ward off attacks and underhanded tactics, and that is the only reason we are back here today. I had reached out to get many of these things off the agenda. To go on to slander a group stating people do not come to council meetings because of us is wholeheartedly misleading. The real truth is, since the People's Council formed, these meetings have been transformed from a morgue to standing room only. What better form of democracy? Do you like it? When the Albert Hall School presented the mayoral debate to teach the children about democracy, were they told if councillors were uncomfortable with lively town hall debate, they would publicly go after you? The real reason people do not come to these meetings is fear of retribution and councillors not listening. Good old boys club is the most common term used. After speaking with other communities, they informed me that their council would never insult residents. It is against every fiber of the Maine Municipal Association guidelines. Councillors and elected officials are held to the highest of standards. Publicly insulting residents goes against every grain of free society. This is what happens in China and in Russia. Officials openly attack opposing democratic groups. The only acts of belligerence at council meetings are to damaged egos and shattered facts, and any councillor who publicly attacks grassroots residents tarnishes the entire council body. Policy change is definitely needed. The People's Council comprises of Democrats, Republicans, a diverse bunch of friends who all bring different qualities to the table. All members are treated equally and with full respect, regardless of the debate, and we are always unanimous with our decisions. The hours put in have been unpaid, as have the supplies. 50% of the council has children in the Waterville school, and all members have had children go through the system. Okay, one line. This council could take a leaf out of our book. I suspect a lot of the misdirected anger in our community has more to do with the election of Donald Trump than lowly Democratic residents. Thank you.
Yes, Steve.
Could I just ask, I mean, this is community note. Should we save these comments for that resolution, 112-2017, or?
That is a good point. So I guess if we are speaking, I don't know that that was speaking specifically to the resolution that's up tonight, but I guess we could save any commentary having to do with public speech to the resolution under new business that you're going to see for Resolution 112-2017. So if the commentary is about free speech and speech at meetings, that would be a good suggestion to save it for that time.
My name is Bob Huzzy. I live in Eustis Parkway, 50 Eustis Parkway. I'm in Ward 2, and I'm just going to bring some information that I've discovered on the school budget. Just want to bring it to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, before bringing information forward relative to the school budget, we need to be have a clear picture of the financial demographics of our town's citizens before we make any budget decisions. Waterville's population has a high percentage of low-income residents.
Bob,
Yes?
well, I guess we are going to postpone the budget vote tonight, so I'll tell you to continue. I was going to postpone your commentary till then, but we're not going to
Okay.
vote on that tonight, so go ahead.
So as the Census Bureau report shows in the attached pie chart, Waterville's employed population income ranges are 61% make 30,000 or less, 26% make between 31,000 and 40,000. That's 87% of the population makes $40,000 or less. Only 2% of the population makes more than 61,000 and above. So after the Waterville's contentious budget season, it appears that our population, despite a large majority of low-income residents, has made schools a financial priority for the town versus the city budget over the years. The 1997 school budget was $11.1 million. When compared to the 2016 budget of $21.2 million, the budget is almost doubled. But once you adjust for inflation by using the Consumer Price Index calculator, 16.6 million in today's dollars would be equivalent to the 1997 budget. But we are spending 21.2. So as the CPI reveals, we are spending 4.5 million more in today's dollars than we did in 1997. This equates to a 27.3 inflationary increase in the school budget during a time when our school enrollment has decreased by 464 students over the same period. That's a 21% decrease. Meanwhile, during the same period, inflationary adjusted city budget only increased 3.64%. Also decreasing in Waterville is the resident household incomes. 5% it's decreased during the same period per the U.S. Census. So why aren't these facts being presented and discussed during the school's educational budget forums? Residents are not anti-school if they bring up these costs. They're just trying to raise awareness of the ever-increasing school budget. I have not heard one of my neighbors or one of my Waterville co-workers expressing anything but strong support for our schools. But we realize these budgetary increases are not sustainable, excuse me, throat's dry. We can't continue spending beyond the means of the city residents. I encourage all Waterville residents to pay close attention to the budget vote, to contact your counselor, insist that they get the school spending under control and within our means. Counselors, your community has told you that 22.8 per thousand evaluation.
I'm just giving you a 3-minute warning.
Okay, I'm just about done, yeah. Evaluation is all you have to spend. When it comes to holding a school budget within our city means, dig further into the details, think out of the box, think creatively. Do everything you can not to lay off our front line, the teachers. From my experience, it's never simple or comfortable to reduce costs. Unfortunately, long term, sometimes you have to make painful decisions. For heaven's sake, do not take the easy way out, rubber stamp the proposed budgets, and borrow from our future to kick the can down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. And I assume, Mayor, that you are here to speak about the budget. Now, what I'll say is...
You're assuming that, but that is not true.
Okay.
Although I do want to say, not all of the constituents have spoken about the need to hold the budget line on the schools.
Well, and actually,
So-
when we get to that order, I think I will have a good update that will probably please 99.9% of the people in the room. So.
Okay, so my question is today a recycling day? No. But is it not the first of the week?
It is.
So the first week, the first full week?
Is next week.
The 10th, July 10th was the published date.
Two things happened. One, the holiday yesterday, obviously the 4th. But more importantly, we lost our regular contractor on the recycling. So the city's now doing the pickup instead of contracting it out. So we didn't have the manpower this week to do the recycling and trash pickup. So we
Okay.
focused on trash.
So next week,
Next week, recycling.
and then what's the week after that?
Then every other week after that. Every other week after that. Every other week after that.
No matter what
No
the
matter- Yep.
week of the month?
Well, no matter what. Yeah.
No matter what the week of the month? Well, that's the confusion.
I mean, if
'cause-
there's a blizzard, we've been told it might not happen.
We are concerned, right, about a blizzard and our crew, public works crew, trying to plow, pick up trash, and recycle. Something they have to give if we get a real disastrous snowstorm.
Okay, but in general,
In general.
Every other week.
it'll be every other week, regardless of, no longer first full week of the month. And
Yeah.
And then in April, it'll be every week because we'll have the truck. Is that?
Yes, correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Hello, I'm Phil Barfia, and I live on Pleasantdale Avenue in Waterville, Ward 2. I just wanted to commend the City Council for taking a careful approach on how the budget is being handled. More than ever before, today City Council has to do more to represent our citizens' values. Library, police, fire, parks, public transportation, housing opportunities, schools, effort to continue to promoting strong growth in our local economy are all hard tasks to undertake, especially since they should include something for each and every citizen in our community, while at the same time balancing the budget. So I just want to take a moment to come and say, hey, you guys have a hard task, and I appreciate that you guys are taking the time to make sure that it is done right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Sullivan. I just want to say how embarrassed I was to listen to my television this evening and to have the headline be that the citizens of Waterville were causing problems to the councilors. There were, I thought to myself, Waterville is trying to rebuild, and this is the message that they are
Sandy,
sending out.
Is this going to be a long, more,
It is
I would
not.
postpone it to then you have you come
No,
back.
it is not long. Obviously, I'm an older citizen, so my morals may be a little different than some people. That embarrassed me, that on my television, it says, I live in a city where the city council is criticizing citizens for participating. Thank you.
So anybody else for community notes? And again, I'll just rehash that if no budget talk, anything that has to do with the free speech policy will be saved for resolution 1/20/2017.
May I ask if there's going to be any conflicts with tonight's votes?
Yes. I have to recuse myself from Order 111, the sale of the city property, 232 Water Street, as I'm a member of the board of directors for the Waterville Community Land Trust.
And I as well. I'm on the Waterville Land Trust, so I will not be voting on Order 111.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unfinished business order 105/2017.
An order providing for sale of city property, 9 Hall Street. Be it hereby ordered by the City Council acting as municipal officers that the high bid of $8,211 submitted by Lori and Anthony Newman for the purchase of a single-family home at 9 Hall Street be accepted. Funds from this sale will be deposited in the South End Neighborhood Improvement Fund once all taxes, fees, etc. are paid.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion among the council? Okay. Any public commentary? We'll move on to a vote. Can I get a roll call, Patty?
Counselor Sol?
Yes.
Counselor Weston?
Yes?
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Champagne?
Yes.
Counselor Tate?
Yes.
Counselor Dupont?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next, under unfinished business is order 106/2017. Can I get a motion to read by title only?
Motion to read by title only.
Thank you.
Second, I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for appropriation of municipal and school operating budgets for the period of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2018.
Can Can I get a motion to adopt? Okay, so we're going to be actually moving to postpone this into our next meeting because we don't have the numbers from the state. As we know, the state did just pass a budget, and so those numbers have not made it to us. I know Mike was on the phone with Eric Haley today. He should have them by next Wednesday, and he'll be meeting with the school board then. And I do want to give the community an update. You know, Mike and I have met with, I believe, every member. I think I might have one or two more to meet with, but we're meeting with everybody on the council and getting a lot of input because we realize that there are a lot of things to balance, as Mr. Bofia brought up earlier. Nobody here wants to destroy our schools, and nobody here wants to tax people out of their homes. And I think we do take those things very, very seriously. So we are working together to have a good compromise budget that, and we have been talking to the schools too, so, and including them in that conversation. I think we will get to a good point, but part of what we're trying to do too is put together a 3-year plan so we can actually show how we're not going to hit a fiscal cliff next year and come across the same thing. So that we can actually come out and say, hey, here's how this is going to work over the next couple of years so we can avoid future emergencies. I think everybody has come to the table with an open mind, and I think everybody has had to give up some of the things that they've wanted. But we are working hard, and we should have that by the next meeting. Of course, we will open that to public debate. There will be time for public input then as well. But all of the concerns are being taken seriously, and I don't think it's an either-or situation as far as ensuring that people get some of that homestead exemption tax relief, but also making sure that we're not having massive layoffs at our schools, and our schools are functioning for the kids. So, with that all said, could I get a motion to table until our next meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just to add to that, did we want to set a special meeting for our budget, to possibly take this on before August? And I'm just thinking that we're probably going to have a lot on our plates in that first meeting in August. We probably don't want to stretch this out to the first meeting. We had mentioned it. It was mentioned before as a possibility of having an emergency meeting to pass the budget, possibly a week after the next meeting.
Mike, can I declare that outside of a city council meeting and call an emergency meeting?
You can.
Because then that way we could coordinate schedules and and then if we need, if the council decides that there needs to be a special meeting to have that second vote before that meeting in August, we could call that at a later time once we've worked with everybody's schedule.
I just want to make sure that advertising in the paper and all that stuff, that we weren't missing that deadline if we waited.
Yeah. But meetings can be called by the mayor or I think the chair of the council.
So probably after this meeting sometime this week, we should get something on the calendar and really start checking on people's calendars.
The good thing is the council took the motion to extend our budgeting, our spending authority these few weeks until the budget gets adopted. So at least we have that authority to spend in the meantime.
Okay, we are moving on to new business, resolution 108, 2017.
A resolution providing for issuance of a special amusement license to Pizza Degree Incorporated, doing business as Pizza Degree. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the City Council hereby authorize the issuance of a special amusement license to Pizza Degree Incorporated, doing business as Pizza Degree, 10 Waterville Commons Drive.
Get a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Next, we move on to resolution 109, 2017.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a second-hand license to North River Hathaway LLC, doing business as Hathaway Mill Antiques. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the City Council hereby authorize the issuance of a second-hand license to North River Hathaway LLC, doing business as Hathaway Mill Antiques, 10 Water Street, Suite 101.
Move to adopt.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Next, resolution 110, 2017.
A resolution providing for disposition of city property, 19 Summer Street. To see what action the City Council wishes to take regarding a recent proposal, see attached, from Mr. Donald Salzberg for the property at 19 Summer Street, or to take any other action regarding the final disposition of this property.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
Move to adopt.
Second.
And I would motion to postpone. Do we have to do the?
Could you just let the council know why we're postponing?
Yes. I would motion that we postpone this to the next meeting because then more formal documentation can be provided.
As far as a more bona fide offer?
I really think the,
Or-
if we're gonna transfer property, we should have a purchase and sale agreement, so both sides understand what the terms are.
Yeah.
So this postponement to the next meeting will give a chance for us to work with Mr. Salzberg on what those terms are gonna be in the purchase and sale agreement. Then you have something to sink your teeth into at the next meeting. And it would be good to have Bill Lee review it also, prior to the council taking action.
Would it be possible to add in the motion that Bill work with Mr. Salzberg to form a,
Yeah, you don't have to add it in because I'm gonna go to Bill for the purchase and sale, format and the terms also. So he'll certainly review it.
So at the last meeting, when Brown House Properties were here, we had an executed purchase and sale before that vote.
We did not have a purchase and sale agreement, no.
So this seems to be a different precedent?
It would be, we've done purchase and sales on some, not on others. Where this has been a contentious thing, I think it's important to get things in black and white clearly before the council takes a vote. But obviously, if you're comfortable taking a vote tonight, you can do that too.
And just for the public to be aware, it was put out that the property was voted on to be torn down. Actually, it was not voted on to be torn down. It was merely voted on, the resolution to sell that property, the order to sell that property was voted down. So at this point, that property is kind of in limbo until the council decides what to do with it.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Yes.
read the Mr. Salzberg's note on here for the public to hear?
Yeah, I think it's relevant.
This is from Mr. Donald Salzberg. I own 23 Summer and am interested in taking possession of 19 Summer, as it would make a nice yard and give me access to my garages, and I would like to take the building down and leave open within 1 year, keep it insured, and keep the property clean. This would save the city demolition costs and work well for me. Thank you for your consideration, Donald. I don't see anything wrong with this proposal, but honestly, if we haven't had a purchase and sales agreement in the past, I think, he's offering a fair offer, but honestly, it'll stay on the tax rolls and we won't have to demolish this building and spend money to do so.
Well, there's not, I don't think we have a formal motion on the table to postpone. I guess I'd like the council to have some discussion on how you would like to proceed with this.
Could I just ask the council, is there anyone that would be against the idea of, from this point forward, that we always have a purchase and sale agreement? I mean, you do in the sale of a house.
That would be contingent upon approval by the council.
Yeah.
I would like to.
Remember, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to say, on the sale of properties, always takes 2 votes, so it's in order. So the first vote, you can say, yes, we're interested in selling to this person. Come back with a purchase and sale agreement for your next meeting so we can see what the terms are. I mean, one of the important things in this proposal, I think, is a deadline for demolition. It says within 1 year. I think Mr. Salzberg has talked about a definite date, but I think we need to have that in writing.
So we can vote on it tonight and we'll have the sales agreement to act on in the next meeting as well.
Could do it that way.
With guidelines to it being demolished in 1 year? Would that be part of that? That's what you're talking
Oh,
about?
yes. Yeah. Actually, he's proposing to do it in the span of the next 2 months.
Okay.
Which would also not leave it in city hands to take care of.
That's another important
On
consideration.
top of the cost of demolition, it's also now not a liability to the city at this point.
I think it's adequate to vote on this resolution, in my opinion.
Well, the motion is right now to
I
vote.
don't believe there was a second on her motion, so there's not really a motion on the floor.
Second.
Well, there's the motion, just the original vote.
To adopt,
Right,
right? But
right.
the motion to postpone didn't get a second.
That's
I can
correct.
withdraw.
Okay.
Can I withdraw my motion?
I would like to second Steve's observation, though, that in the future it would be helpful to get formal proposals for the sale and adjudication of property before the council. I mean, I'm a little disconcerted in the form of a handwritten note as opposed to a finding.
I think, though, if we're going to start talking policy, my only concern is that it's not part of a larger discussion, because what we found out at the last meeting was that there's potentially neighborhood and community discussion taking place on properties and concerns and desires on some of these properties. And then we've already gone out to bid, so it's almost like there needs to be a larger policy about, even before we go out to bid, what
Right.
that step A through Z
Yeah.
process
Okay.
looks like, so. And
So just so you know, I proposed a policy to Mike about just contacting as an interim step, the city councilor in the ward where the building is, before any sale is made, or before, so that what I don't want to have happen is I don't want people to be publicly embarrassed in the city council chambers, thinking that they have bid on something and then they're unable to buy it. So I think with proper notification, we can avoid that.
yeah, or perhaps, it might just make sense to have a small subcommittee of counselors. It can be informal, it doesn't need to be appointed, to get together and look at that, and also talk to the landlord association, because I know they're gonna have a lot of input, to make sure that we're not alienating potential investors in the city. Is that something that
I think
somebody would like to spearhead that effort and make sure there's a diverse group of counselors that can look at that issue?
I'll certainly step up, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I will definitely.
Okay, so because it's informal, I guess we can decide that at a later date.
I can chair it. I can chair it.
Okay, so whereas we are not postponing this, is there anybody here that would like to speak to this offer tonight? So this is open for-
Hi, I'm Heather Marrow. I live on Autumn Street. I'm a member of the South End Neighborhood Association, and we strongly support this. This way here, Mr. Salzberg is doing the demolition, the city's not doing the demolition, and it stays on the tax rolls. It's not going to become a green space that we have to maintain. So we fully support it.
Paula Raymond, Ward 7, and Mr. Salzberg has not only offered to bring a formal notification of the company that will take care of the demolition and the due date, which is August 31st. It'll be completely done, that we were going to present and are going to present to Mike. He also made out a check for half the cost of the back taxes of $4,057.23. And I asked for a bank check. So it's a good one. So I'm a big one on bank checks. So at any rate, I'm going to present this to Mike because he is in earnest. It is in keeping with the strategic plan that the South End Neighborhood Association established in 2007. And so we do hope that you will continue to support our work and the work of this gentleman here in working with us to do what we want to do with the South End, which is improve it. So I'm going to present this to you, Mike.
Is there any further discussion, or does the council feel ready to vote on this now? Are we ready to take a vote? We ready?
Move the vote.
Okay. Patty, can you see us? All those in favor? All opposed? Next up is Order 111, 2017.
An order providing for sale of city property 232 Water Street. Be it hereby ordered by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as municipal officers as follows, that the single-family residence located at 232 Water Street be sold to the Waterville Community Land Trust for the amount of $2,000 with the understanding that the city will remit the sale amount minus costs, $500, to the South End Neighborhood Association.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second. All right, open for discussion among the council.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the property was donated to the South End Neighborhood Association.
Right.
We're selling it. But they're selling it, and they're looking to get money back from a donated property? I guess I'm not quite sure.
Property was really donated to the city instead of the South End Neighborhood Association, because they're not an organized 501c3. We are, of course.
Right.
And so the property owner was able to donate it to us, take a tax advantage as a result of that donation. And with the understanding, then we started looking at the property, along with South End Neighborhood Association. People soon realized, and we had a couple of contractors in, and I know Paula can speak to that, and so can Councilor Dupont. It was felt that it was probably beyond repair, and the best thing would be to demolish it. So that's the plan, is to have it demolished and then transfer that property, that land, to Waterville Community Land Trust.
I'm in full in favor of that. I guess my only concern is that we're remitting the sale amount to the South End Neighborhood Association on the donated property to the city of Waterville, when we had a bid at last meeting where we could have raised over $19,000, and some of the officers decided that it was best not to sell the property. So I guess what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a motion to strike out with the understanding that the city will remit sale amount minus cost of $500 to the South End Neighborhood Association and replace it with to be deposited into the general fund for the city. And I'll wait for if there's any.
Is there a second on that motion? Second.
In regards to discussion, you know, the city could have gained $19,000 with the sale of the property. The property was rejected by the Booker. The Bookers had presented a reasonable offer. Offer was rejected wholeheartedly by the South End Neighborhood Association. And with that said, you know, I think the city should be making some money back up in that respect. So I think that $2,000 should go back to the city.
Is there other discussion in the council?
Sure, so some of the back history of this was that the neighborhood association had been doing a lot of work, specifically Paula.
Oh, you've abstained, that's right.
From voting? So
You can't talk about it.
So I can't talk at all?
That's right.
Okay, then open it up to community discussion. I'm sure someone in the community could, if you don't want me to.
Mr. Ward, we have an attorney here. If somebody has abstained, and this is a question that I certainly am not going to pretend to have that expertise. If somebody has abstained from voting on an issue due to a conflict of interest, are they allowed to take part in the debate and discussion on that item?
I don't believe they would, Your Honor. Your Honor.
There you go, Nick.
Claim it.
I don't believe they would, although it wouldn't preclude public discussion if that was appropriate.
Okay. So I think public discussion is appropriate.
Okay, so I could go to the podium and be a public person?
Yes.
Should
Yes.
I do that?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay. Okay.
Those who don't think there are rules that govern these meetings, we do by.
I'm trying to follow them right. So some of the back history on this is that the Neighborhood Association, specifically the Quality of Life Committee, that some members are part of here tonight, did a lot of work talking to neighbors, and it happened to be that one of the landlords that they contacted about improving the neighborhood said, you know what, I'd love to donate this building to your organization. They unfortunately didn't know that Senna was not a 501c3. In order to kind of, I think, say like, hey, how can this be a win-win for everyone? You would they were having like family problems. They want, tax break. Who doesn't want that? We met with, Paul and I met, and she can speak to this as well, met with Mike and asked, what could we do about this in a way that would benefit everyone, and could the city operate as a conduit, to hold to receive the donation so that the owners could get the tax write-off, and then, allow us to then sell the property and get what the intention was of the donated property was just for these folks to contribute to what Senna was doing financially. That's the backstory to this and how it has come to be. It wasn't city tax acquired, and we've been very grateful, that the city was able to hold it for us, accept the donation and support those folks and our folk and us in those efforts.
So just to clarify, can I ask a question? Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
So just to clarify, the donor of the property wanted the sale, of the proceeds from the property to go to Senna.
That is correct.
So I would be very concerned that if we don't honor that, we will not be seeing people making donations to the city. Why would they if they can't trust that the money they're giving or the valuable property that they're giving is going to the recipient that they want to receive that? That would be my concern.
I would counter that by saying that the bidding process in Waterville has been severely tarnished by the actions of the last meeting.
I think this is a separate.
I think it's a
I
totally
think it's the
separate
same
issue.
issue.
All right, one at a
Yeah.
time, one at a time.
Okay.
Who would like, is there one of you that would like to be recognized, and we will take turns?
Yes. So in my mind, we have $19,000 in regards to money that we lost as of the last vote on rejecting the bid. So I'm taking it off the top and I'm going down to $17,000 that the city is well owned, and I think that should go back to the general fund. That's my comment.
There were 7,000 in back taxes on the other property as well.
Sure.
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
May I address it to Councilor Champagne?
Yes, of course.
So, Nick, do you believe that in cases where there is a property that has to be disposed of by the city, that the neighbors in the neighborhood around that property should have, that their opinions or concerns should have weight in that decision?
Sure. The only thing is that with a bidding process, the process is put out to bid, it's advertised. It was appallingly rejected at the last meeting. And I just think that the city should be collecting that money. If CENA chooses to accept and not accept certain funds from different locations, I think that we should be collecting as much money as we can.
Here's a question. I have a question, and perhaps somebody from CENA could answer this. And I realize you don't have the whole group here. I've been to a couple of meetings.
Perhaps
It's a
if
lot.
we're going to get into a discussion, it'd be better if the person from CENA answering it is not the council member. I don't want to get into it.
Okay.
Anything can be couched as a discussion with the council.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. I will put out a, Paula, you're going to come up. Well, you're on the move. So we're doing council discussion right now. So the question I guess I would have is, because it was a desired goal of the South End Neighborhood Association to demolish that property, and that was actually a goal, and the South End Neighborhood Association was willing to forego the city, which really affects all taxpayers, being able to collect the back taxes of the $7,000, which is probably more, to me, more of a bigger deal actually than the $19,000 that we would have made, because that would have just gone back to the capital improvement fund. As a trade, would the South End Neighborhood Association be willing to donate that $2,000 as reimbursement for the back taxes, since it was the desire of the South End Neighborhood Association to have that building demolished and forego those back taxes? That way we're all working hand in hand. Is that something that the South End Neighborhood Association would consider?
I would have to bring it to their attention. It's not something that I can say for myself. I'm just a representative and a member. I'm certainly not the chair. I choose not to be a chair, just safer. I do want to explain, though, and maybe it's just my misunderstanding of protocol and how things go and where money goes here and there and that sort of thing, revenues coming in and all of that. I do know that our purpose in the South End for 17 years has been to clean it up, to go with less and less double, quadruple, 3 units and that sort of thing, because it has definitely affected the aesthetics and the living of the South End, and most of us, if not all of us, would agree with that. So part of our work is to bring in single-family homes again, which is what it was like 50 years ago. I do believe that our work does affect the city as a whole. It's not very myopic, which is what I'm hearing. You might think that that's what we're doing. That's not what we're doing at all. We believe that by taking care of the South End and the way that we're doing it is going to benefit the city as a whole, because we will bring in families who are working families. We will bring in single-family owners, and the taxes will change. For me, $2,000 is a very small amount to be arguing about or discussing or bantering back and forth. The gentleman did want that money to go to the South End Neighborhood Association / Quality of Life Committee. From my perspective, I would honor that, and I would encourage my group to honor that, but it's a vote that they would have to take, and I certainly would bring your concerns and your wishes to the members and tell
Yeah,
them
and
why. Because
and
I
that's-
understand, I get it, I get about the taxes, I get about the revenue, I really do. When I'm first listening to you, I'm hearing punishment here because we did something last week that didn't seem appropriate. I hope that's not the case, because that's not what we're about. We really believe in what we're doing. We're just beginning to actually stand, especially myself, stand up here in front of all of you, try to be prepared, try to have the right answers, and try to do the right thing so that we maximize our dollars all the way around. The South End has suffered a great deal, and there's a reason for it. And tonight's not the night to be discussing that. And we're trying to turn it around. That takes time, and it takes some challenges, and it takes some sucking it up sometimes, where maybe the city says, you know what, if that's where they want it to go and that's what they're doing, and then watch us and have concerns and say, you know what, we don't agree with that, it's not working as a whole, that's okay. But this, when we're taking down a building, when we're selling a building, or asking to have a building sold to a particular person for a particular reason, it's to clean it up, it's to make it right again. And I'm not sure if that's idealistic. I believe in it. I believe that we can do it. We need your support when we're doing that. And $2,000, one way or the other, it is not going to change anything, really.
I'm not commenting on the 2,000, I'm commenting on the 19,000 that we should have had at the last, if a bid was accepted, we would have had $19,000 in revenue. Has nothing to do with the, with the overall views of CINA. It's just a matter of dollars and cents. And quite honestly, you know, the example that I want to make tonight is that, look, if the city has a reasonable source of revenue for any organization, any committee, then you should be willing to accept that. And that this process this process has been in place for years, and to jeopardize that process by hijacking a bid, a reasonable bid from a reputable bidder in this community, I just think is wrong. And honestly, that's where I am tonight. So that's why I brought up this amendment, and that's why I'm standing with it.
And may I just say that, and again, it's just my lack of understanding the line items in a city plan and what you do. I guess I'm thinking that we've saved $10,000 because we don't have to pay for that. So that's money that we saved. And then he's bringing in $4,086 to pay for half the taxes. So I'm looking at it at $14,000. And so I figure the city is losing 5 and not 19. Am I mistaken with that?
No, you're about right. I mean,
Okay.
you think about everything that's coming in between.
Okay, because we can play games with data and statistics and all
Sure.
of that all the time. We
Sure.
can do the graphs and all of that. But I guess when he came in and was willing to raise it, which is really what we want, I thought, gosh, we're only losing $5,000 for the city, not the 19. That was the way I interpreted it. But if I'm wrong, then you can help me to understand
When the council's.
the line items and how they work.
And I'll just clarify, and then I will certainly recognize you, Councilor, and I thank you for being patient.
I'm getting two tongues here.
That's all right. Paula, you do a fine job coming up here, and I do just want to say, I think hopefully, as the council moves forward together and comes up with a policy and a new procedure for how things go out to bid and having some of these community discussions beforehand, this really should be the last time we have these kind of more
May I
contentious
ask one more, though?
discussions about this.
It's a petition for me, is to be on a subcommittee like that. I think sometimes, or I believe, not think, but I believe sometimes having a citizen on a subcommittee such as that, since it's not real formal, where we have to go through you to be approved or not approved, is just appropriate, because then we understand what's going on. And then when I go back to the group that I work in, the South End, I can help them to understand that when we have a quality of life committee. I can explain to them. It's one of the things that we've been working on. We're going on our 3rd year. I've had the chief of police come in. I've had the public works come in. I've had the park and rec come in, because sometimes we misunderstand what's going on and we make things up, or somebody says something over the phone or the neighbor, and they really don't know. They really don't understand. And so I'm part of that ship. And so having people come in and having me be a part of that committee will help me to go to them and say, this is the rule, this is the way they want to do it, and let's work together. Because quite honestly, that's my focus, is to be proactive. Does that?
So I think that question will have to get answered after this meeting,
Okay.
when they'll decide that. But I know you, Councilor Lessing, has been very patient and waiting to be recognized. And
I would just say that I absolutely support that. I think it's a really good thing to have citizens sitting on committees that make decisions of such importance to the city. And then the thing that I was waiting to say, which I'll add, is that I think what Senna is doing, and what impressed me most about its strategic plan, is that it's thinking of value in terms of raising the property value of that neighborhood over the course of 5 years, 10 years, so that it's a sustainable investment in economic growth, which is very different from wanting to grab a small amount of money quickly. And I'm not saying that one is always right and the other is always wrong, but I'm saying those two things have to be balanced. Thank you.
They do, and I just think one of the things that, and this is not to debate either or, because I think you guys will all work this out, is that there is statistics that show there is an economic activity that goes along with every person that lives in the city. And we do have a housing crunch, and for every person that we forego being able to move into the city, we do forego the economic activity that is associated with that person. So I think there's a lot of things that will come to balance. Sina certainly is at the table to have those discussions. There is a motion on the table to move these funds that has been seconded, so I would like to get to the point where we can have a vote.
I have a quick comment to make, if I may.
I believe that the council is done. We will open the floor to commentary from the public regarding that motion to move those funds from South End to the general fund.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Karen Raincourt Thomas, Ward 7. I'm not part of Senate anymore. However, the group itself does a wonderful job. It has improved the quality of life in the South End, especially at the street that I live on. You know, it's very cramped, and there was a few houses that have been taken down, which has improved the neighborhood. It has improved the neighborhood's life. I mean, people can park cars now. On my street that I live on, which is Cary Lane, you can barely get a car down there. So by removing some of these buildings, you've created spaces where people can get their cars off the street, especially during, if it's snowing out, what do you do with your vehicle? You can't leave it there. You're going to get towed or someone's going to hit you. So you have to look at $2,000. I mean, I understand what you're saying because the city is in a budget crunch, but it's the quality of life that you're bringing to the areas. And it's not all about the money sometimes. It's about wanting people to live in our area. We do want people living in the South End. It's improved. It's greatly improved in the last 10 years, and it's through the work of Senna and other people who have taken interest in what's happening down there. So you can pick and choose 19,000, 7,000, 2,000. But this money should go to Senna because the job they're doing is a wonderful job, and we need to continue the association. And that money does help us greatly. They put on, things in the park for the kids. So thank you very much. Please put the money to Senna. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Hello, Carl Foss, Ward 4. I don't know what's going on, but I am a CPA, and so I can tell you how this probably should go. And maybe it isn't. You can correct me if I have my facts wrong. So if the donor intended this money to go to Senna, and hopefully you have some paperwork to this fact, that if the donor, the term is temporarily restricted this money to be used for Senna, then the city has a legal responsibility to bring that money to where the donor said he wanted those funds to go to. Because it's not the council's decision to make, it's not the Senna's decision to make where that money goes. It's the sole responsibility to the donor who made the donation on where that property, that asset, or the cash should go. So if you have proof to the fact that this money should go here, you can't then say, well, we want to vote for this money to go to the general fund, because it's not your decision to make, it's the donor's decision to make. So I just wanted to bring that up. So thank you.
Thank you. Is the council ready to take a vote on this? I'll recognize the councilor.
This is I agree with Carl, this is a sticky situation where I agree with my councilman, Mr. Champagne. I do have regrets too about the bidding process of Shermbrook of being denied his bid on this property. I share his sentiment, and I share his understanding of trying to make up some of that loss. At the same time, I feel, having been a resident of the South End myself for many years in my first home, that I do understand and recognize what South End Neighborhood Association has done and is doing and will continue to do. They have brought a lot of great ideas, a conversation, and very much closely knit neighborhoods back together. Crime has been reduced and way of life has improved, and that's a constant ongoing thing. But I also understand, reading the summary of this and understanding the context, that they had intent to donate the money to South End Neighborhood Association would make my vote to honor that on behalf of that donor. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay. All right, we will have a vote. So the vote now is on the motion.
It's on the amendment.
Is on Nick's amendment to move that $2,000 from CINA to the general fund. So a yes vote would be saying yes, you want to move that. A no vote would be saying no, you want to leave this order as it is. So all those in favor of the amendment? All opposed? Vote is 1 in favor, 3 opposed. And so we will move the order as it is. I believe we're probably ready to take a vote. I think we talked about this enough.
Move the vote.
Okay. All those in favor? All in favor, not opposed. Thank you. The next is Resolution 112, 2017.
A resolution providing for adoption of policy for conduct of meetings. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the attached policy be adopted to govern participation by the public at meetings of the City Council.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there?
Second.
All right, so that opens the floor for debate on the council. So discussion on the council, and I would defer to Councilor Lessing, since this is your proposal, you would certainly take precedence for first on the floor.
Thank you. I would just say that these rules will not prevent anyone from discussing issues or ideas. If you read them carefully, you'll see that they don't preclude that. They will hopefully prevent booing, shouting, profanity, and personal attacks. I think those are reasonable parameters for public meetings. There's a huge difference between responding to an issue and attacking a person's character. The first is being a good citizen. The second is suppressing free speech through intimidation. I'm hopeful that these rules will ensure that every citizen who comes here will be treated with respect.
I'd like to add that all of what's written out here is contained in Robert's rules, which are the governing rules of our meetings. This is a long book. It's a book that I have to admit that while I have attempted to read it, I have only begun to understand the many mysteries that it holds. And so I think that this is, in fact, a really helpful summary and set of principles that we can all refer to and have present when we think about how we want to run this meeting. I agree with some of the statements that I've heard that Robert Rules already has actually mandated these guidelines, but I do think it's helpful, as one of my constituents told me this afternoon before coming to this meeting, that it would be helpful to have this reminder for all of us.
So I guess just wanted a couple of comments. It looks like some of the things that were in the original thing, the original proposal, were taken out, and I'm glad to see that, because there was one that had, I believe, a limit to 2 minutes. It looks like that's put back to 3. And some of these things, like the 2 minutes, 3 minutes, those are up to the body, but I mean, I think 3 minutes is appropriate, because yeah, I've been at the legislature when you're there for hours and hours and hours, and there's people at the door, and they still give you 3 minutes, and they still give you that warning and let you finish your thought most of the time, at least the times I've been there. But I think it's important, because I've been pretty lax at times. I mean, particularly with the council, I don't demand people wait to be called upon, although tonight I have, in light of this proposal coming here. And I think it's got to be clear that anything that's adopted is going to be, going to certainly tighten my rules with the council, and that's going to govern whether the council is calling people names, whether counselors are whispering and passing notes during meetings, which has happened recently that I've seen. So some of that behavior is certainly going to be governed on here. And I think it would be helpful to have some discussion among the council about what constitutes a personal attack, because there's been a lot of discussion about this. I mean, certainly coming up and name calling people is unacceptable. But I think there's a line where if somebody is making, if a council or the mayor, and I've taken my fair share of criticism over the years, has a proposal or a statement that people don't like, they're gonna get up and say it. And I would love, I know we say Bill Lee has commented on this. I would think it would be great to have more discussion with him, because I've looked up actually, Mr. Nail, when we get to public discussion, I would love to hear what you have to say. Federal courts have actually, there's actually a lot of case law on this, in that what it states is that if, generally, if city councils open the floor to the public, once that door is open, you can stop personal attacks. But outside of that, there is very little limit to what you can put on people's speech. And the federal courts have typically, from all the case law that I've reviewed over the last week, erred on the side of free speech. And so like when we have community notes, you know, we don't always like what people have to say, and but as long as they're not name calling, it's hard to say they can't say it when we have a lot of people at a time, you know, standard time to come up and have 3 minutes. So I'm looking forward to council discussion. I'm looking forward to hear what people have to say, but I guess those are my opening thoughts on just kind of the preliminary view of this.
Yes, I can speak to that issue.
Yes, Council.
So I'll say I've been teaching at a college level for 25 years. And one thing that I learned fairly early on is that in discussions in the classroom, if you're discussing an issue about which there's disagreement, and you know, that's a common thing, and you have, let's say you have, you know, Tom and Mary arguing about an issue. Let's say it's whether a museum should be privately or publicly funded. So if John says, wait, am I bringing a third person in here? Is it Tom and Mary? If Tom says, I think it's terrible that museums should receive any public money. I think they should all be privately funded entirely. And Mary says, well, that really speaks to your character, Tom. I would have expected nothing better from you. Then what's happened there is that now they're no longer talking about the issue. They're talking about Tom's character. Tom has been personally attacked, and he feels the need to respond to that. So soon, you're not having a class discussion anymore. You're having a debate about who is a better person. And that is not fruitful to decision-making. And it's not fruitful for discussion. And the other students in the class will hesitate before they speak because they would not like to share Tom's fate. And so what you wind up having is a really terrible classroom culture if you allow that to take root. And that's my fear here, is that if someone stands up and speaks or appears before the city council with a petition and they're attacked, other people will be very hesitant to do the same. And that is detrimental to our democracy.
Councilor.
I'd like to talk about Robert's rules. That was the one that, you know, I think they were referring to. We presently use them. We've used them for quite a while, and I think we should continue to use them. But Robert's rules aren't for the city council. Let's be clear on that. Robert's rules are for everybody that's in this room, okay? So, you know, just make sure that we all understood that. And you can go online and check the summary, and everything that she was offering, that Lauren was offering as a suggestion that we do is pretty much in Robert's rules, okay? So this isn't something that's a drastic change, but I just want to bring up something because, you know, I worked with kids for a lot of years too. And, you know, when you had two kids that didn't get along, you didn't tell them to go out on the playground and like call each other names and duke it out and stuff. You had them come to terms. Now, we're all smart, intelligent people, you know, with various backgrounds. I expect the same from us. I mean, the city council and everyone that comes to the meetings, we should be civil to each other. Rather than you saying that I should be thick-skinned, and I say that you should be thick-skinned, Why don't we instead just all respect each other and learn that sometimes we agree with each other and sometimes we don't? That's what I think we should do.
Sure, and I would say that over the last months and years, I know Mayor Heck did the same thing, and mayors before her. I've had to use the gavel on city councilors. I've gavelled and called out of order people in the audience on both sides of just about every issue that we face. I guess, do we have copies of this? Because do we have copies of this so people can see? I mean,
Is it online? Yeah.
I can make copies very easily.
I guess it would be helpful, because it looks different than the original draft even that I saw.
But I can confirm for the public, sorry, that everything that's on that paper is in Robert's rules, because I looked it up.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
I feel like most of the stuff, I mean, what I'm looking at here is stuff that we already will call out of order, like interrupting speakers, private conversations during meetings.
I'm happy to read the whole thing if you want.
That would, I could read it, like, I guess. You got it?
Coin or?
All right. You have a better voice, you go ahead.
The public is invited to attend all meetings of the Waterville City Council. They may also actively participate by contributing to community notes and to discussions of agenda items to be voted upon. In support of and respect for an open, fair, and informed decision-making process, the City Council and Mayor recognize that civil, respectful, and courteous discourse and behavior are conducive to the democratic and harmonious airing of concerns and decision-making. And uncivil discourse and/or discourteous and inappropriate behavior have a negative impact on the character and productivity of the decision-making process. In an effort to preserve the intent of open government, make civil discourse possible, and maintain a positive environment for citizen input and council decision-making, the following rules have been established. Meeting attendees, the audience, will refrain from commenting, clapping, shouting, booing, or other inappropriate and/or disruptive behavior. Will refrain from interrupting speakers. Will refrain from private conversations during meetings. Should not address council members in individual conversation or make comments to individual council members during the meeting. Should obtain permission to speak from the mayor or presiding officer. Meeting attendees, speakers, will state their name and address, will be allowed no more than 3 minutes to speak during community notes and no more than 2 minutes during discussions of items to be voted upon. Will avoid repetitive comments. A statement of agreement with previous speakers will be appreciated and appropriate. Will conduct themselves in a civil and respectful manner at all times and will refrain from making comments of a personal nature regarding others. Name-calling, threats, and/or obscenity are forbidden. Shouting, yelling, or screaming is forbidden. Disregard of these rules will be met with the following consequences. The mayor or presiding city councilor will request the behavior to stop. If after this warning the behavior continues, the offender will be asked to leave and if necessary, escorted from the council chambers.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I have 2 little kids I'd like to put to bed. Can I just speak briefly?
Please, come
If
on.
you don't mind.
Come.
Okay, so I am
Tom Nail.
Tom Nail, Ward 1. I am all in favor of civility. I don't think that government is going to work effectively if we aren't civil. I get a little bit concerned when we start maybe moving towards censorship and moving away from civility, and that's kind of where I think we're headed with this situation here. First of all, what is the council envisioning when they talk about threats? Like are you talking about threats of like physical violence? Is that the concern?
That's what a threat is.
Okay, well, fortunately, we already have laws that prevent that, okay? So this council doesn't really need to worry about that. Law enforcement can take care of that. The other issue that I'm seeing here is that are we concerned about directly addressing, is that what I'm hearing, that you cannot directly address a counselor? Is that what I'm hearing?
Just to clarify, that would be without being acknowledged and without seeking permission from the chair of the meeting to just interrupt a conversation process and address a counselor.
Okay, because that's not,
So you're talking about normal out of order.
Right, that's right.
that's not what that says. That just says you simply could not address
That's true.
a counselor. Because what that would prevent is that would prevent me from seeing maybe Nick Champagne out doing some public service work. And then I would come in here and I would want to say, hey, Nick, great job doing, I saw what you did downtown, that was terrific. And I would get called out of order and potentially escorted out of here.
Would you do that during the meeting or would you do it before?
But why would it be inappropriate for me to do it during community notes?
That would be awesome if you did it during community notes. but
Right.
Community notes is not, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Okay. So, and the other part of it too is that if we're talking about threats and we're understanding that threats of violence aren't necessarily an issue, then what other types of threats are we talking about? We'd be talking about someone saying, if so-and-so doesn't vote a certain way, then I'm not gonna vote for you next
No,
term?
I think you would say threats of violence.
Okay, but then why do we need that resolution when we already have those statutes under Title 17A?
Why do
It seems
we-
it seems
I mean,
redundant.
You could extend it and say everything that's in here is already in Robert's rules, right?
I would extend it and say that
Except
I already
that-
gavel people out of order for all these things.
Except that doesn't always happen.
But I think the concern here is this, is that, and this is what a lot of people, I think, hear, especially as the budget has become a more intense issue. It was an intense issue last year, so intense that it became to a point where it was people moved to repeal it. And when you have that type of situation happen, what happens is that people's confidence in their government erodes. And the hostility level here with the budget talks is high, and it was high at the last meeting. And what happened is that there were some people who were critical of the budget process. And here at the next meeting, they now are faced potentially with, or the council is moving to put in rules of conduct. And it doesn't seem to me that these rules are not connected to people disagreeing with the council. Disagreement is fine. That does not mean that someone is being uncivil, and it does not mean that someone is being rude or disrespectful or hateful or bullying. It's just part of the process. There are going to be people on this council that are going to disagree with other people on this council. There are going to be people in this room that are going to disagree with people on the council. And that doesn't mean that you go and pass a set of rules of conduct to basically try and intimidate people from voicing their opinions here. The stated rationale on your part is that this is actually being done to encourage discourse.
That's right.
And I think it's going to discourage discourse. Thank you.
Yes, we'll have some responses here. We'll go to, I heard Councilor Champagne, then I'll defer to Councilor Mayhew.
Nick, you had mentioned a discussion on personal attacks. What constitutes a personal attack? What defines a personal attack? Look, if you make a statement in a public forum, that, a public statement out in the public, people can comment on that, and they can discuss what you had discussed and possibly present another viewpoint. I don't think that those are personal attacks. I've been land-based a couple of times, like Nick said, over the past few years. It happens. People go up there, they express their opinions, and quite honestly, I've just had to take it. It's a process. That's what we do. This is the discussion process, and I guess that's my idea. A personal attack is, calling someone a name, referring to a group or someone as belligerent is a personal attack, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
Thank you. And I guess my point is that a lot of these, and going further into these rules, a lot of these are redundant. I don't like redundant red tape in the books. I honestly think that if we're already following the rules, let's just keep it the way it is and just do a little bit better as a council and as the public to abide by the unwritten rules, so to speak. Thank you.
I'll respond to that. Or Sid, were you next?
Yeah.
She can respond, I can wait.
Okay.
So I would just say that there's a huge difference between disagreement and an attack. An attack, a verbal attack, is an impingement on someone's character. And that's what I heard at the last meeting 3 times. And that's not okay. That is the kind of, it creates an atmosphere where people do not feel that it's safe to speak. And I know I've heard from my constituents that they're horrified by what they see on TV when they see people verbally attacked in city council meetings. And I did hear from one gentleman, a business owner in town, who said he used to come to city council meetings and he just can't stand it anymore because the tone has gotten so belligerent. That's a huge problem for us. If we can't, as a town, come together and meet civilly to have discussions about issues that pertain to all of us. Now, I think I would probably agree that this is redundant to some extent if everything that's in here is in Robert's rules. Thank you, Steve, for looking that up. But I would want a commitment to actually abide by Robert's rules in a consistent way.
Sure, and I would reiterate that if we do that, it's going to apply to the council too. There's going to be no whispering and no passing, you're not gonna speak until you've been called upon. Because and those are long-standing, somewhat, long-standing laxity that we've had here, until it gets very full and contentious, and then we tend to tighten it up a little bit.
Mayor Isger, can I ask you a question?
You certainly can.
How would you define a personal attack?
I would define a personal attack as, well, I think we've had this discussion, because I think one of my concerns was putting some parameters around that, because I'm trying to be clear, these are the council's meetings, and I am a chair that abides by rules that are set for me by the city council, and I need to understand what those rules are. If somebody gets up there and says, Councilor Lessing, I think you're an idiot, this is a personal attack. If someone says, I think you're a jerk, that's a personal attack. If someone gets up and says, you know, Councilor Mayhew, didn't you, you know, you just voted down, you know, you're voting on something because Burger King's going in here and you work for McDonald's. I think you have a conflict of interest, and there becomes this kind of back and forth. I guess that's where I'm unclear when it just says something like personal attacks. I'm unclear of what those parameters are, and I'd like to see some kind of discussion framework, because otherwise it's left up to my judgment, and clearly you feel that that those personal attacks have crept in, and I guess I would like, if there's going to be rules set for me to abide by as a chair of the meeting, I would like to just to have some general parameters of what that is. Because even Mike and I have had a lot of back and forth over the last couple of days, and sometimes we're saying, yeah, that's right, no, you're not right, no, okay, and we're,
You know, I'm far less concerned about people speaking to the council or criticizing councilors' behavior than I am with people criticizing their fellow citizens. I mean, I'm your fellow citizen too, but their fellow citizens in the audience behavior. Because I feel that drives people away and it intimidates them and discourages them from feeling free to speak. And I think, you know, publicly questioning someone's motives, attacking their honesty, those are also personal attacks in my opinion. And they're very problematic because, again, who wants to be on television having their honesty questioned? And there's always a way to discuss an issue without attacking a person. I don't think it's necessary to launch a character attack on someone else in order to make a point.
I would agree with that there's no need ever to make a character attack on somebody, you know, and I think there's been some circumstances lately though where, like, if we look at, we were sworn up and down, this is a good example, sworn up and down that the educator kids were not counted in our cost per pupil and that the cost per pupil was an accurate number. The school knew that that was an inaccurate, or they found out later. So I'd actually talked to Paula and they found out that was an inaccurate statement. And that the educator kids had been counted and that it actually changed by 10% where we were on the list of costs for funding per school. Now, I've actually taken time over the last bunch of months to go into our schools and talk to our principals, and I've gotten a better understanding of it. And to me, that didn't make a big difference onto where I saw the budget numbers falling at that point. But because the school never voluntarily came out and gave that information, and it took citizens to go out and call the Department of Education to find out to expose those numbers, it creates the impression to the community that that the school is hiding numbers, or that these numbers are purposely being driven that way because they knew that those numbers were inaccurate and they never exposed those numbers, and it took private citizens to do so even after the school already knew that. Again, I didn't say anything about it because I didn't question the school's motives. I had worked with Paula to find that out, and I do believe that it was an honest miscalculation and there was a great misunderstanding about how the number was calculated. That's not excusing personal attacks, so that's certainly not excusing personal attacks. And I'll be honest, I'd have to watch a video of the last meeting to remember exactly what was said. I do know that Scott Jones's name was mentioned, and I know Scott Jones, I know him very well. His wife was a school teacher for my son. She's going to be a school teacher for my daughter next year, and I like Scott. From what I recall, it was brought up the fact that the numbers he presented were wrong, and he had hosted a public forum. So by bringing in his name, I guess, is that a personal attack? I don't remember what was said or any character attacks, but I could be wrong, and you can correct me if that is the case.
I would say that there's a big difference between having a debate about numbers and bringing in a correct set of numbers or a different set of numbers, and we can talk about the numbers, and assuming that someone is dishonest. I don't want those kinds of public accusations made here, because then community volunteers who do the great work that some of our community volunteers do will be very reluctant to come forward and help us with caring for the city as they have done, if they feel that by doing so, they are not only going to be disputed, that's fine, but they are going to have their motives and their integrity questioned publicly.
Oh, sure. And listen, I mean, at that meeting that the public school had, a former mayoral candidate stood up and said that we were launching a organized attack on public education, and I had a city councilor spouse write a letter to the editor recently that was basically a bunch of garbage, misrepresenting my views and making things up. I know what it feels like to be maligned by falsehood. But I guess what I would say is, however the council votes, I would just hope that the council would take it to heart that it behooves us, the public servants, to make sure the integrity of what we're presenting and what we're saying comes first, because we cannot expect better behavior from those. And I'm not saying you behaved in an inappropriate way. It's not certainly nothing to do with you, but so if we find, so we're more like if we find out that there are numbers, we should present those numbers to the public and make sure. That way, and we can present it in a way. So I think it's it's a two-way street, and I just want to make sure that whatever things we're talking about and behavior we're talking about, it's applying also to those of us who have taken it upon ourselves to serve the public, to be held really to a higher standard than to those whom we serve.
I would just make two, Sid, I feel like you haven't had a chance to talk, I'm sorry, but let me say one more thing if you don't mind. I would just say two things. One, there's a big difference between having a public debate and making a personal attack. I think that we up here should certainly not be making public attacks against one another or members of the audience ever. And I think there's also a difference in forum between making a criticism in the newspaper, writing a letter to the editor, and speaking here in a way that makes people feel if they stand up and speak in this chamber, that they will be attacked. There's something about the ability to come up and talk in front of your elected representatives and express an opinion that I think is really sacred to our democracy. And I don't think that we should be creating an atmosphere where people feel they can't do that.
Sure, and I guess the reason I bring it up, and to be honest, I don't think any of us disagrees with the concept of treating each other kindly, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't think that's really what's up for debate. Because when I ran, if you look back at the very first article that was ever written when I ran for office, it was because I felt like some people who were up here on the city council at the time were frankly smug, arrogant people who actually intimidated people from the public.
So that would be an example of a public attack. Just saying.
I know what I'm saying, but because that's what was that's what I saw happening. It was actually there was an atmosphere that the public felt intimidated to come up here at that time by the people who sat up here. So just want to make sure that whatever rules we apply are taken to heart both ways. Council.
Just want to point out that when we fixate on these things like this, we forget about all the good things that are happening. Like, let's not forget right now. Look at Main Street, when you go down Main Street, what's going on and what's going to be happening with the hotel and all these other things. I mean, we have a choice to make. We can, as a group, everyone in this room decide, let's be more civil and try harder to follow the Robert's rules, or let's fixate on this and talk about it week after week after week, and then, put your comments in the newspaper without your name in it. Let's move on and be positive and work together. That's what I say. So,
We're opening the draft and interchange in another week.
That's right.
That's way bigger than any of this.
Yeah.
Councilor.
Well, everybody on this council has a complete different perception as individuals, obviously, to what a personal attack is and what isn't. But certainly, some of the comments I have to make, regarding that and what I've seen and what I've heard, and constituent space is things that, has there been clear discourse and irritations registered here before our forums and meetings? Of course there have been. Have there been divisions created in a perceptual ideology, and the latest being Friends of Waterville Schools versus the famous People's Councils? Yes, there have been. Names have been mentioned, sometimes not in the most positive light and sometimes out of context. Rebuttals have been given in disagreement on a passionate level, clearly polarized. And I want to say that everybody that sits here in this chamber comes here for the sole purpose of being passionate about the community. And to think of having their rights overregulated and bureaucratic red tape imposed on Robert's rules that we already have now is very disturbing to me. People like Scott Jones and Scott Taylor deserve equal, due process, and they have a right to speak, and they should be respected, along with Julian Payne and Gary Mayu have the same, justification we should give them. Never under my tenure as a councilman has the mayor allowed such disagreement and discourse to feverishly burn out of control here. It is the mayor of this council chamber that organizes plans and follows Robert rules of law and is governance of all council chamber meetings which involve public interaction on the forum we all call community notes. This resolution, to me, is a negative swipe at his discretion to govern and rule in the chamber with his gavel and maintaining order and demeanor of the curriculum that is proposed and presented within his chamber. Residential taxpayers are the very catalyst of why we are here along this bench to represent and serve them as they are our constituents, and ultimately they are the CEOs of our continued presence here. We are always on notice and can be fired at any time. I never stop remembering this because I'm extremely grateful to serve within this body and represent my neighborhood with immense pride. I do cover personally my ward by foot and knuckles on doors, and I even give out literature I manufacture to keep constituents actively informed and to know their rationality and position on matters of concern. Executing an indictment, judging one's character and intent, limiting their time to speak, and restricting residential taxpayers based upon what we perceive as viable or not, and or repetitive, is nothing short of an intentional snub of bureaucratic regulatory red tape on our residential right to freely express themselves before sworn-in representatives of themselves, which is us. It is inconceivable and grossly inappropriate. We are having this discussion before the main priority of a viable municipal budget. And lastly, an insult to the mayor, who has shown a willingness to listen with empathy, rule over known and or perceived misbehavior, and silence hecklers that can cause unnecessary discourse, which I have witnessed. As adults, as counsel to our constituency, we should be endorsing their subjective right to freedom of expression and speech rather than force civil compliance of rules manufactured to put our council body in a position of an elitist authority in passing as judge, jury, and executioner over local taxpayers who come to register their concerns on a conceived appropriate fashion. That is why I urge you to all defeat and nullify this resolution here today, as it is a doctrine of indecency to those that voted us in office and unnecessary regulatory conceptions. Read this resolution carefully, as we all should look into a mirror before telling local taxpayers they have to first.
So if I may respond to that, I will just reiterate by saying that this is a summary and an affirmation of the rules and Robert's Rules of Order that we already are supposed to be following in this council chamber.
I think that was really more to Steve's point. Like, I don't know why we're focusing on this so much.
I think it's, as to Winifred's point, it's a useful summary because it is an enormous tome and one that everyone in the audience maybe has not read and committed to memory. This hits the points I think that are relevant
So
here.
it says adoption of policy, but if we're already governed by Robert's rules, aren't we adopting something we already have? And I'm not asking that to be belligerent. I mean, that's a legitimate question.
Perhaps we...
Because I actually feel like this tonight has actually probably been the best example of a darn civil debate that has gone back and forth up here.
So perhaps what we should do is consider this vote a commitment to following the rules then that already govern us.
don't
what
think- I
we're
don't think it's
saying is
necessary.
if this is turned down, that we will continue to use Robert's rules that we've been using all along. And everybody will be more aware of the responsibilities they have in the room.
And that personal attacks will not be allowed to happen unchallenged in the council chamber.
As stated in Robert's rules. Yep.
Yes, I have some questions, but you know what, I'm not gonna, we have people who want to speak, and I'm not gonna belabor this any longer. For my part, Counselor, I will ask you after, because as far as some points of clarification. Is the council ready to allow the public to have their time to have input on this? And again, if you see me looking down, it's because I have my phone. It's a trick I learned from our former mayor, because it has a really wonderful stopwatch on it. And as of now, we are still governed by the 3-minute rule. And I just want to be clear, there's always been time limits. They might get flexible here and there, but it's not new to have time limits.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. So let's look at the protagonist in this policy change. Councillor Lessing communicated her belief to the People's Council last year maybe council meetings could be done differently. Community notes and community involvement could be held outside of regular council meetings. Make no mistake, this is her first step in achieving that goal. No pesky obstacles like residents in the way. It is a backlash because we respectfully expose the real cost for students, and it was in stark contrast from the numbers being touted by a special interest group that Lessing belongs to. Lessing support comes from councillors and colleagues all within this group. When colleagues make public presentations, your name can be referenced to that event. Who shall I say presented it? Santa Claus? Fact, this policy change put forward by Lessing from her council seat is aimed at silencing residents opposing the same group she belongs to. It is not how we are saying things that is the problem. It is what we are saying officials don't like. Why are they scared of our voice? Were city officials looking at policy changes when residents were publicly attacked in the parent press and education forums? Lessing and Mike Roy state people at council meetings boo, behave inappropriately, engage in disruptive behavior. Let me make it quite clear. That is not the residents engaging in that behavior. It is councillors and special interest groups. Mike Roy, the city manager, publicly put his name on this policy change. Realizing it needs sugar-coating ads, people, of course, are free to express themselves. Does the policy change have anything to do with the fact that residents democratically overturned the city budget last year? Maybe it is because the People's Council policed conflict. Maybe because residents attend budget meetings for the first time. Isn't that irritating? Who will police what words can be said? Councillor Lessing, I suggest any words with the letter IN be banned. There is nothing in the main municipal guidelines that states councillors should not be named. Holding someone accountable is not a personal attack when you are an elected official. Clapping is banned, then that must apply to every speaker on all occasions. And interesting enough, the city manager can clearly be seen on video clapping after a special interest member delivered a speech. A video says a million words. How long until the next policy change? Will the next change remove the press? Who will escort residents from council meetings? The SS? We are heading down a slippery path. Veterans died, so councillors do not make new policy rules. Freedom of speech allows citizens to question and hold elected officials accountable.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Can I have the last line? No.
Ori Lessing, Ward 3. Again, madly in love, so probably going to back her up on that, but going to make my statement. I was really, really impressed with what happened when Nick raised the amendment and the discussion occurred and people from the community came up here. And it was just incredible to watch this political process happen. Nick's representing his beliefs, my wife's representing hers. There are people, you know, there are exceptions made so that Jackie can speak up here. I mean, it was just pretty amazing. And at the end of the day, I felt like everyone's opinions were represented. I wish I could bring my students in to city council chambers to see that sort of interaction. That's just such a positive thing. There are times when I've been here at meetings and I've thought, I'm so glad my students aren't here. You know, I feel like comments are made that I would never allow in a classroom. You know, the SS were just brought up, Julian. I didn't appreciate that at all. That's you know, that's ridiculous. You've got a city councilor who is, I'm telling my genuine feeling. I mean,
Just don't address somebody in the audience.
oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You know, I feel, I don't mean to even single him out on that. I just felt that I feel like I learn a tremendous amount when people of different ideas come forward and talk about the issues. And I feel like when there's an atmosphere of toxicity where people feel like they're going to be attacked, or that like if a person believes something, it's going down a really terrifying line, it just becomes a toxic atmosphere. I didn't feel, again, biased. I didn't feel like this document reflected on anybody sitting here. I feel like you all are pretty incredible, quite frankly. I felt like it's a reiteration to the public of what is expected in these chambers so that this chamber becomes a place that is respected, and the people behind this desk, no matter what their opinions or beliefs are respected as well. And I think it's protective of, I think it's bipartisan. I think it should be protective of all the individuals here, because I want this chamber to be a place where I bring my students, and my students see the incredible work that you do, like the moment that happened before this. Thank you.
Hello, Gary May, Ward 5. Colby professors recently encouraged their students to exercise their First Amendment rights by participating in downtown Waterville protests at the doorsteps of City Hall. Ironically, Councilor Lessing, a Colby employee, proposed a resolution to silence the message of lowly residents living at the bottom of the hill. It appears she desires a carte blanche check to push her ideological agenda without opposition. Her ideology is so extreme that she publicly lashed out and called residents belligerent, all because of differing opinions. This behavior set new lows in standards of conduct, unbecoming of a city official. It appears that First Amendment rights only apply to protect free speech that she agrees with. Stripping away our civil liberties is the end goal of this resolution. Put up, pay up, and shut up, they dictate. Was the disabled veteran who asked the council to change the pet ordinance belligerent? Were the two elderly women who claimed their tax bill was too much to bear also belligerent? Was it belligerent when a resident exposed fuzzy math misrepresentations made by the superintendent and school boards, which lowered the per pupil costs? Was it belligerent, or were these concerned residents exercising their civic duty, which is the responsibility of every American? Where was your outrage when a councilor publicly called a concerned resident an idiot? Where was the outrage when a councilor publicly smeared a reputable business by referring them as a slumlord, insulting them and the entire community, and opening up the city to litigation? Where was your outrage? Governments run best when held accountable. Unless this council body has something to hide, accountability should be welcomed, not eliminated. Our mayor and council chair have always run orderly meetings, which abides by Robert rules. However, they do allow people an opportunity to express differing opinions contrary to some city officials. If your policies have merit, welcome challenge. Teamwork will establish better policy, not the creation of unnecessary barriers. Any effort to further limit public participation is an embarrassment and an indication that Waterville has become a city of intolerance and a city that opposes diversity and inclusiveness. If this council has become so intolerant that you now suppress diversity and civil liberties, is your next step proposing a resolution that attacks civil rights? I urge you to protect free speech and vote down this resolution. Thank you.
Karen Heck, Ward 6. I'm truly confused. This is not about First Amendment rights. This is about civility and how we create a community that cares about one another. It's if someone comes and says they feel attacked and says, I've seen other people attacked, and let's reiterate our commitment to rules that we already say we're operating under. It has nothing to do with civil rights or any kind of free impeachment of impediment of First Amendment rights. And to wonder about what's personal and what's not, I mean, think about what you'd accept from your kids. It's really not that difficult. And I would also observe that during my time as mayor, I would be shocked to know that there were people who couldn't come up and say what they thought, because we had very vigorous discussions about the recycling and about the police station. People got to say what they wanted. People did get attacked in that situation, and one of the counselors finally left her position as a counselor because of the attacks, both in the media and in social media. And if anybody thinks that there is not a lot of attacking going on outside of this room, check out the comments. I really, truly am puzzled that this becomes some kind of, seen as some kind of conspiracy to tell people that they can't come up here and say what they want. That's why we created community notes to be very first on the agenda. They used to be at the end. You had to sit through all of that. You get 3 minutes. You get to come up and say what you want. You get time to come up and say what you want when there's discussion about an issue that's on the agenda. There is no suppression of free speech. There is an effort to try and make people feel safe in this chamber. And to have somebody voting against that is really kind of concerning to me. Thank you.
I just want to think this, Mayor, I think that goes back to Steve's point of, is there a reason we're adopting something that we already have? Or why don't we just say now we're reaffirming our commitment to abide by these civil rules of discourse?
Well, I think that it's become clear that this has been a problem, and for everybody to be clear about what this is, that there's an affirmation that we want to do this, make it a resolution. You don't have to make it a policy. Make it a resolution that this is the way we're going to conduct business. It has nothing to do with
Isn't that what it is?
free speech. Is it a policy or is it a resolution you're offering?
It is.
A resolution.
And
What's wrong with a resolution then?
You know, my point was, I just need the council to be clear that, like, I will call out more of their behavior too. That was,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I totally agree with that.
Reen Finch, Ward 6. Before I speak, I just want to make clear that I'm speaking as an individual. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization or group. Like Tom Nail, I have censorship and free speech concerns. Supreme Courts, both state and the National Supreme Court, have held that community notes sections of public or of city council town hall meetings fall under limited free speech, which means that they can be limited in topic, they can be limited for how long, and that viewpoint neutral restrictions are allowed when speech is actually disruptive. These same Supreme Courts, both state and national, have also affirmed that rambling, profane, and cruel speech is protected speech during community notes. So I have some concerns with the no repetitive comments, no personal nature comments, and no name calling and obscenities. You know, my first question is who decides what a personal nature comment is, and my second would be how specifically those would survive First Amendment challenge. So I would encourage the council to table the motion and at least look at, in particular, the free speech concerns that have been upheld by Supreme Courts in regards to those four restrictive pieces. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I do, just to be clear, you were speaking to the community notes section in a particular way, not and as far as a motion of debate, which would be treated differently as far as behavioral.
Yeah, it is
Yes.
strictly community
Yep.
note.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood you correctly.
Yes.
You know, I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Hello, Scott Taylor, Ward 4. I've only recently begun attending city council meetings, I think starting in February or March, and I will say that I would welcome, whether via this resolution or via a simple affirmation by the entire council and mayor that they will uphold Robert's Rules of Order, that you will reinvigorate your attention to these matters. Last council meeting in particular was a particular low point, but at many council meetings since I've begun coming here, there have been many extraneous comments from the audience during either debate or community notes sections. There have been, I've observed many times when private conversations are being held during the meeting, and I would welcome your reaffirmation that these meetings will be held in a way that encourages the entire public to attend and to comment. Thank you.
I agree with that. And just, I do try, like the last time, there was a public-private conversation that was right there. I heard it, I gavelled it down, called it out. Sometimes I don't hear it. I've had a couple times where Councilor Champagne has said, Mayor. But yes, private conversations should certainly not be happening while people are trying to speak. Yes, sir.
Phil Barfield, Ward 2 resident. I have to say, when I first read the article in the newspaper, I mean, I was very concerned, and my first concern would be the same as many people had here: is who gets to decide what a personal attack is? Because what could be a personal attack to one person would be for another person, and it is clear that there definitely is an issue, with message delivery. And I think that if trying to dictate how that message is delivered, can be perceived as as their freedom of speech being, suppressed. I definitely understand where Councilor Lessing is coming from, and I definitely understand where the members of the community are coming from. And just sitting here today and listening to what's being said, I can definitely say that it would be the wiser approach. I think would be to just reaffirm that we're going to make a commitment to each other to be civil, whether there's city councilors or community members, and I think that's what everybody wants. And the resolution that's put before the city council, I would say it's a reasonable resolution. But at the same time, it could be perceived as, possibly being, trying to suppress, trying to have stop residents from being able to voice their opinions. And in light of all the things that happen in our communities, with the budget and other really sensitive matters, and putting that kind of resolution at this time would most definitely bring out from the community, as you've seen, some serious concern. So I really urge, the city council to strike down the resolution and just reaffirm that, that us as a body and a community and, as a city council members, we will make it upon ourselves, to come here and be civil and try to have a good discussion amongst each other. Thank you.
And one of the things I really hope, with the way we're handling the budget this year, like in the past, just so a lot of people may or may not know, in the past, Finance Committee meets, they come up with a list of things they're going to do, it gets presented to the council, and that's that. This year, we're actually sitting down with every councilor saying, what is important to you? What is negotiable to you? And I think I really hope that this process we're undertaking is something that becomes a permanent process and model for the future. And that kind of uniformity that hopefully can come from the council and show the community that it's not all or nothing on either side, and that we actually can address property tax relief and funding our schools at the same time. Hopefully that really kicks the ball off rolling. It's like Steve said, there's some great things happening here. We have $65 million being invested in our downtown. We were about to open the Trafton interchange, which goes back, I think, potentially even before Mayor Heck. These partners that's been with us for 7 years, which I think 10 years from now could be one of the biggest, mind-blowing, altering things that happen to the city as far as our ability to expand the tax base and expand in a way that could actually attract manufacturing jobs to this area. So there's great things happening leadership starts here, and I certainly hope that we can all affirm that we will lead that process.
So,
I do want, before you make a motion, because we've already allowed so many people, I will.
Heather Marrow,
Yes.
Ward 6. I just want to say that a lot of it's about respect. We all come from different parts of the city, and we all have different political views. So it doesn't matter whether if you have your side conversations, or if you're passing notes back and forth, which has happened at tonight's meeting. It's about respect. It's listening to what the people have to say. I work elections. When I work election day, you wouldn't know what my political party is, because it doesn't matter to me what your political party is. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, it's up to me to remind you. So, and that's what it's about. It's about respect. We shouldn't be discussing rules, Robert's rules. He must be some famous guy, but what are we doing here? We've discussed this for over an hour. Robert's rules. And all it boils down to is respect for one another, and to open your mind and close your mouth and listen to what your neighbor has to say.
Thank you. Councilor Lessing, I'm going to let you close this out, and I think we've talked this one to death.
yeah, everybody is ready to go out into the air, I think. So can I just clear two things up, and I swear I'll be very quick. Could I ask the city attorney if there's anything antithetical to free speech as defined by the First Amendment in this document first, quickly? Like, and you can say that like as a yes or no. You know? Yeah. There is. All right, in that case, then I think what I would do is I would ask that we vote to commit to following, can I change that? I'm still new to this. So can I change to vote this to a commitment to adhering to Robert's rules?
Yeah, so rescind your original motion and say, I move that we
Right.
resolve to commit to
Right.
a note of civility and dialogue according to Robert's rules.
So I rescind this, and I vote that we commit to following the same guidelines that are contained within Robert's Rules of Order.
Is there a second?
Second.
Could I just suggest that we
Yeah.
amend that to all people?
Where's all?
I think it's
It's
universal
of
to
course.
the governance of a
Assume-
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's assumed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All those in favor? Wonderful.
Unanimous.
That's the
So-
amendment, so we want to move this as amended now and make that what we're voting
Oh,
on?
we have to vote still. Yeah.
I didn't think it was an amendment. I thought she
Right.
pulled her initial thing and actually made a new motion.
Move to
Yeah.
vote as amended. Did I do that?
It wasn't really your,
Oh, no, I guess I can't.
We didn't amend it, we rescinded it.
Parliamentarian?
the motion was actually rescinded, the original motion, and a new resolution was proposed with the language that the councilor just stated.
Okay.
That I'm sure could be put into an email to you at
Right.
a later time.
All right.
Next up is a discussion of a conflict of interest. I have been given notice that I think it would be the preference to, and this is no slight on you, Counselor, but that we wait till our City Attorney Bill Lee is here. I think there's a comfort level with his involvement with this issue. Mike, I don't know what the rules are surrounding that, but can we just move this to the next meeting? Is that, I've been
It's
made
a
aware.
discussion item only.
Yeah.
So this- I've been made aware of that after I had spoken to you, Mr. Ewens.
Well, Bill has been very familiar with this whole subject matter. As a matter of fact, he's talked about it, Bill Lee has at prior meetings, as to what a counselor's duties are in regards to the conflict of interest.
Before we even have a discussion on it, I think if there's a comfort level of waiting for the next.
I was getting to the point of saying he really should be here to explain what he's already told us.
Thank you. Mike, we're at the manager's report.
Okay, manager's report has 3 items, and I'll make it very quick for everyone's benefit. First, we have 3 applicants for Garth's code enforcement position. So we interviewed 3 people, we're down to 1, and still talking with that one person about coming on board. So I'm hoping that decision to hire a new code enforcement officer is finalized this week. Garth is through at the end of July, but he's indicated he can continue if we need that transition between the 2. So That's good news. The city did receive 2 proposals for solar installation at the city landfill property, and we're in the process of reviewing those 2. Councilor Sol, the mayor, Bill Lee, Greg Brown, myself, and Garvin Donegan are part of that group looking at the 2 proposals, which of course will come to you in due time. Lastly, the Trafton Road. If you've been on the highway, you've noticed the ramps really are very, very close being done. The ribbon cutting opening ceremony is supposed to be this Friday. It's been delayed to the 14th, Friday the 14th, not this Friday. So I'll send you all an invitation for people who want to come to the ribbon cutting. You're welcome to do so. It's 10:30, Friday the 14th. Those are my items, unless there are any questions.
Can I just say one more thing? The new paintings that are downtown
Yes.
are tremendous.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.